Being a Christian woman and walking in God's calling for our lives can be a difficult task. With the world and pop culture telling us to be one way, and the Bible saying another, you kind of end up feeling like an other. Well, you're not alone. Join me now and my friends as we navigate life in our 20s and 30s, while making sure we live out our faith, embrace our femininity, and looking cute. We discuss pop culture, life, careers, relationships, and so much more. Prepare to be entertained and educated. I know you're going to love it. Join our movement and embrace being another girl. The views expressed on this podcast are our own and do not reflect our employers. Enjoy. Friends, I'm Mallory.
And I'm Jay.
And we are changing culture and bringing back traditional values. Welcome, 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 everyone, to this week's TCAP. We have a lot to discuss. A lot has happened last, honestly, like 2 weeks. But I'm also really excited to have my friend Jay on. She is someone who is like really into pop culture as well. And she has her own podcast that we will talk about at the end. She can promote it. And she is just a wealth of knowledge. She's very smart and intelligent. We have really good pop culture conversations and just like culture conversations all the time. So I'm just really excited for us to like talk about stuff and for it to be recorded and then for everyone to listen, because I think it's not to be like that person, but like we just started a podcast. You know how like when people have the conversation, they go, "Oh, we just started a podcast." Anyway, everybody, thank you guys for listening. Jay, thank you for coming on. First, I guess let's talk about you. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and like why on earth would I have you come on?
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. So my name's Jay, as stated, and I have been in the entertainment industry for the bulk of my career, in different capacities as art director, creative director, beauty editor. I did that for about 10 years. And I moved into the social media space, but I worked very closely with celebrities for the bulk of my career. And in many different capacities throughout magazines, any like major magazine you've probably heard of. I've worked with them and news networks, late night shows, things like that. I have been closely working on set with celebrities for it was actually more like 11 years that I did
I
that.
also, really quick to cut you off, I just want to say she's also like really humble. She's not one of like when I first met her, I didn't get this like, oh yeah, I've been around blah blah vibe at all. It was just like we talk about something, she's like, well, in this experience that I've had, and you're like, wait a second, you like what? She's very like kind and humble, a normal person, like, and continue.
Thank you so much for saying that. Yeah, it's actually very funny to do the elevator pitch right now because I don't do it and I don't have it down at all. I generally don't bring it up unless there's like a relevant story where someone will bring up a certain celebrity. I'm like, oh, I have a funny story with them. But for the most part, the elevator pitch of my career is not something that I do. So hopefully that kind of covered it. But as you hear me talk, you'll probably just get it. And that's kind of my approach. And I think very much people who work within the industry, who are really good at what they do and have been in it a long time, are also like very no nonsense people. And so you just kind of absorb that behavior. And I've been really, really blessed to be around some super, super talented performers and people who work behind the scenes who are even more amazing, I think. And so I consider myself very lucky and also hopefully have some insights that maybe most people wouldn't have thought of. Um, so I'm really happy to be here. And I'm just super, super happy you're having me. Hopefully that
I'm
sums it up.
Yeah, no, that was good. I'm really happy to have you too. Like, we were talking about this off camera. Sometimes I'll have like guests on like my friends and we'll be talking and I'll mention like a celebrity and they're like, who? And I'm like, no, like I need you to like I need you to understand what I'm saying. And they're like, I don't know who this is. And it's gonna be good and refreshing to have someone who can like talk in depth about what we're talking about. Cause for those that do not know, if this is your first time tuning in and you're like, what is this? This is a pop culture podcast that is not like other pop culture podcasts. We put a huge emphasis on our faith and femininity. As women, as Christian women, we really want to talk about these different topics. So like a lot of the topics we're talking about today are kind of pop culture or just like culture in general that's going on, like you guys will hear. And we want to talk about these topics though from the Christian conservative perspective, because this is not, when you are hearing these topics on your other fun pop culture podcasts, you might not hear the same type of opinion that we have. And that's why we're here. We're here to offer that other opinion, to be in the podcast charts so that you and your sisters and your grandmother and your mother's niece can hear another opinion. And we're also funny and have good thoughts. So, Jamie, before we get started, I wonder if you could tell us like a fun story from, from anything in Hollywood about someone that you really like, a positive. Let's start off with a positive one, like someone you're like, wow, I didn't expect them to be so nice or something like that.
I think the first thing that comes to mind, and probably when people ask me, like, what was a moment you were really genuinely starstruck? Because for the most part, you don't have time to be starstruck. And you also don't want to look unprofessional. So you just kind of, your exterior behavior will very much downplay even into your own heart and mind about the gravity of what's happening in your life. But I will say, one experience that was super exciting for me was working with Anne Hathaway.
Ooh.
And we worked together on a live performance that she did in New York City. And I don't want to get into too much detail because we did have like such a sweet, very personal moment that I'll really treasure forever. But well, for one thing, her son is just so cute, and he was with her, and getting to see her and her husband interacting with her son and just the sweet parents they are was really heartwarming. And when we did have a moment alone, we had such a just a sweet like hug that she gave me, and she was hugging me so just, it was so much of a intentional embrace. It was tight. It was like you could tell just that she was emotionally impacted, and how she was expressing it. It was just so sweet. And in my head, as this is happening, I'm like, I could barely hug her back. I was in such a state because I was like, my head
she's
was
a
like
princess,
the Genovia
a
national
legitimate,
anthem.
yeah.
Genovia, the land I call my home. Like in my head, as like this is happening, I'm like, the Queen of Genovia is hugging me.
No, literally.
So I absolutely have a very special place in my heart for that memory. And that's probably the one that that stands out to me the most. And I also have like this other one kind of came up about she's maybe more famous to Gen X, but I worked with Gina Davis doing a press junket, and she is just so sweet and so friendly. And I had this pair of like pink sparkly shoes, these like sneakers. I think you would have loved them. And she
sounds like it.
And it was funny because the guy who was styling her hair for that was his name's Serge Normant, and he is known for being a legend in the fashion industry. He's done Julia Roberts' hair for years, and he had just come off of doing the royal wedding for Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. And so he had just done that and then came back to the city to work with Gina. And and he mentioned how I was really smart to wear shoes that I was wearing because the weather was like really weird, where it was like snowy and slushy, but not so much that you would need snow boots. And he had worn snow boots, and he felt like, oh, I wore snow boots, but it's just like you do what you have to do in the city. And so I had worn these like very thick pink sparkly sneakers, and he was like, oh, you were so smart to wear those. Those are great. And Gina was like, oh my God, I love your shoes. And so I kept those shoes like honestly far longer than I should have, to the point where like I had a friend who was like, why are you still like, she's helping me edit my closet. She's like, why do you still have these shoes? I'm like, Gina Davis once said that she really liked those. And
That's
so I have
funny.
certain items in my wardrobe that I refuse to let go because some celebrity said something nice about them. I have like another shirt that Camila Cabello really liked, and like even though it's like worn out, I'm like, Camila Cabello liked this shirt.
That's funny. Well, that's really cool. And for those that I looked up Gina Davis really quick because I was like, I know that name. She's Mrs. Stuart Little, the mom from Stuart Little. For
That's
those who
definitely
are
what the
trying to,
millennial would know her as.
yeah, for those trying to like make the connection. But that's really cool though. I like to hear the positive interactions, especially because like Princess Diaries, for Anne Hathaway, for example, Princess Diaries is like my childhood. Like I got that movie for Christmas. I want to say maybe when I was 8, whenever it came out, like that Christmas, that's the movie I got, and I would watch it every single day, which like makes me cringe because now I cannot watch the same movie over and over again. I just can't do it. But like at the time, I was like, this is such like this is cinema. Like I remember thinking like this is the peak of cinema. Like how can a movie top this? So the idea that Anne Hathaway was so kind to you like that makes me happy. She's a real princess.
She really is, like, absolutely has the demeanor of like this is
Yeah.
who she presents herself as, and I commend her for that because I think have had I been in the shoes of a celebrity, I've watched people like I've been right next to them while they get mobbed by fans and paparazzi, and I'm like, how do you do this? Like I'd be one of those celebrities that people are like, she's not very nice because I'd just be like, too many people. And the fact that these people are like so kind or even like pleasant to this many people is like, I don't think most people could handle it, and I don't think most people understand just how um draining it is to be harassed by random people who you don't know their intentions towards you at any time you go out into public. And I think we do need to be gentler on people who don't have a reputation for being nice to fans in random places because it's just difficult. I even get mad when a waiter comes up to my table at the wrong time. So if a person came up to my table in a restaurant, I'd be like, what do you want? Like I was talking. Don't interrupt me.
That's so funny. I mean, I was thinking about that video. I don't remember if it was like new, but it was going around TikTok the last couple of weeks of like Justin Bieber, like this girl coming up like outside of his apartment complex, and this girl standing there like trying to talk to him, and he's like, "Hey, like this is my plate, like this is my home, like I really don't want you guys." And the girl's like, "Well, can you sing me a song or something like that?" And he's like, "No, like this is my home. Can you leave me alone?" I can't imagine like that level of fame. I mean, I wouldn't say it was like even close, but when I was in China, you know, everyone, especially because like I'm black, everyone was walking up to me and like, oh, can I get a picture? Like that was fun, but like that wasn't every second of the day, and they weren't at my house. Like the house thing, I think would be like that would drive me insane. Like if people,
Mhm.
and you made a good point too. You don't know people's intention because like we're normal people. Like if I were to see a celebrity, actually, I saw John Quinones once, the guy from What Would You Do, at the airport, and I started walking to. I waved and I was like, "Are you?" And he nodded, and he was on the phone, so I was like, "Okay, he doesn't want to be bothered." So he gave me a thumbs up, and I gave him a thumbs up back. Like that's a normal response, but like there are crazy people who would just be like, "Well, I need to talk to you right now," and it's like he's on the phone. I can tell he doesn't want to be bothered. Just give him a thumbs up. It's okay. Like whatever, that's fine. So you really don't know people's intentions, and I'm sure that's really scary.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you did a great job in that circumstance to notice, like, oh, they're doing something. And just like you would if you saw a good friend somewhere and you noticed they were on the
Right,
phone, like, you wouldn't do that to a friend. Don't do that to someone you don't know. Or
right.
even like if think of how you would approach someone that you don't know, who you're not like crazed, but you just want to have an opportunity to speak to them. Like, just be like socially aware and intelligent about how you approach
Yeah. And
people.
hopefully everyone listening, like we have like normal people listening, but if you know other people who are a little weird, go ahead and like give them this advice. Cause it really, I mean, really when you think about it, like I think it's fun to think
Mhm.
about, oh wow, this celebrity, like their work of art really meant a lot to me. So I want to let them know. Perfect example. I'm trying to think of someone who like, okay, this is going to sound crazy. Um, Will Arnett, voice of BoJack Horseman. That show, though it be a little crazy, that show really means a lot. I quote a lot from it. Would I recommend everyone to watch it? No. But that show meant a lot. If I were to meet Will Arnett, I would want to tell him, like, hey, I want you to know, like, your work of art meant a lot to me. And, like, it has helped me. There have been times in my life where I was really sad and I thought back to a quote that your character or, like, something that a writer did on your show. You know, I would want to tell him that. But, like, you know, be, like, that's normal. That's fine. But, like, walking up to someone and, like, oh my God, like, screaming in their face and, like, you know, just, that's too much. Like, that's not, in my head, I'm like, that's the only time I would ever truly approach a celebrity. So, like, if I were to meet John Quinones, I would just be like, oh, I used to love watching What Would You Do with My Grandma. I miss her so much. It was such a good time. I just want to let you know, appreciate your show. And leave it at that. Like, I think sometimes, especially the people who, like, stand outside celebrities' houses, that's just too freaking much. And it's also not healthy, like, for you mentally. Like, there has to be something wrong with you for you to think that, like, just standing there and, like, being around them is okay.
Mm-hmm.
Especially someone's place of, yeah.
Yeah, if you wouldn't do that to a friend, don't do it to a celebrity.
Very good point. So, speaking of celebrities, we have a lot to talk about. Before we do that, I want to do some morning announcements, everyone. Number one, this week is the March for Life. If you are going by yourself, join us. January 19th in Washington, D.C. Message me, I'll add you to the group chat. We're going to have a good time. Don't go by yourself. You can march with us. We're going to meet. I'll tell you the location we're meeting. And then afterwards, we're getting dinner. Or lunch. Probably dinner. Whatever you want to call it. Dinner. We used to call it dinner when I was younger because of the time. Anyway. We're also packing Embrace Grace boxes, and the creator of Embrace Grace, her episode is actually going to be this week's interview, and she's going to talk about, like, the different things if a mother chooses life, like different programs she can be a part of, and, like, just kind of showing how those of us who are pro-life, we don't just care about the baby, we also care about the mom, and, like, there are so many other things that we can do to help our community, even outside of just, like, oh, I'm pro-life. Even if you're not pro-life, there are so many things that you can help mothers as a community. Like, I think that's something that we all can be and should be part of. Lastly, Patreon. You should join the Patreon. There is still the giveaway. We're doing $50 gift card to Culture of Life 1972. And you can join us for low as $5. You get one new episode a month, like a completely, like, different episode. So I am going in depth about my pro-life story. You get early access to special events, and then when we have an interview, you get a special Patreon question. So there'll be a question that only the Patreon listeners get. So yeah, that is it. Those are all the announcements. And now we are going to get into the stories. We do this thing where you have a drink with you. And right before we do the stories, we kind of do like a little toast, kind of like clink. Yeah. As we're about to sip our tea for the teacup. All right. So main stories. There were 2 major music drops this week, or this Friday. So the day before we release this. I want to talk 5 seconds to, like, the one that, like, the least amount of people are talking about. And then we're going to have a whole conversation about the other one. The first one is Ariana's song. It's called Yes and I guess it's kind of supposed to be, you guys can look it up and watch the video. I think it's kind of supposed to be like her, like, you guys are talking so much about me. Yes, and I don't care. Not gonna lie, it's kind of a bop. I am trying not to support her, but I did want to look at the video because I did want to talk about it for a hot second, because I think what's so weird about it, and I've seen a couple other people have a similar take. What is so weird about it to me is that she's saying yes, and she's like, yes, but, like, you were a homewrecker. Like, this isn't like someone was, like, making fun of, like, for me, I'd think yes, and if I'm, like, speaking up for something that I believe is the truth. Yes, and, like, I don't care. But, like, you know, you broke up your marriage and then broke up another marriage and the man had a child. So it's not really, it's not the same, you know? What were your thoughts?
So I looked up the lyrics because, I mean, that's what you have to do. Like, the lawyer in me is all over, like, what did you say? And I think it's really interesting that she's comparing it to healing, like how everybody's healing from somebody, like everybody's gets hurt by someone and everyone's healing from somebody. Does that give you an excuse to hurt people? Does that make it okay just because it's common that people get hurt and they have to recover from getting hurt? Or comparing it to a boy putting lipstick on, which doesn't hurt anyone really. Like if you consider like who you wearing certain lipstick affects pretty much just yourself. And comparing like, oh, people saying or thinking judgmental things about someone wearing lipstick and comparing that to what she did, which is like the attitude in this song is like, oh yeah, like all these people are making judgments. Like you can't compare that to somebody wearing lipstick and people having thoughts about that, because that doesn't hurt or affect people. But breaking up a marriage, especially when there's a child involved,
right? These two things are not very comparable, like apples and oranges, really.
Like this is like honestly like oranges and pineapples.
Yeah.
The amount of pride in these lyrics is insane to me. Like there's just absolutely no remorse. But I don't think that anyone expects Ariana to be remorseful. I don't know of any fan who actually thinks much of her character.
Like, I will say, because actually, my friends and I listened to music one time, and then I want to say like "Thank You Next" came on, and I was like, change it. And I'm like, you know what, you're right, we should change it. Like I used to be a huge Ariana fan. Now, you know, she's no like Miley Cyrus or Selena, but like I really liked her. And that just, you know, this really soured her to me, because I personally hate cheating. I think cheating is like one of the worst things you can do to somebody. And then to break up a family and then not be remorseful. I will say doesn't make it better, but it is interesting that they're still together, because you know a lot of times like once it becomes public, people break up, but they're still together. A little weird, but I mean that's true too.
It's not been that long, and I can't see her staying with him. She really doesn't have it in her to stay with anyone, regardless of how good they might be for her, or if that were the case, which I don't think it is. It's kind of like what you get by manipulation and control is maintained by manipulation and control, which, because it was her manipulation, she's going to have a motivation in her to actually keep him. And she has him, and he's like not going to be the person that runs or gives her like any incentive, because he would have to actually manipulate as well to keep her invested and interested in kind of controlling him. So she's just going to keep going for things that basically she has this craving to control others, and if they are already controlled, it's just not going to keep her interested. So at this point, like I think she's entertained. This is just my opinion. I think she's entertained by the drama and the way people are looking at her and looking at the situation. But when that dies down and people stop caring, like all the incentive for her will be gone.
That is such a valid point. And I want to add to what you said. She is literally what people act like Taylor Swift is, in the sense of like just using guys here and there. And like, you know, I'm not saying that Taylor Swift hasn't dated a bunch of guys. Like that's, you know, a whole nother conversation. But I feel like, at least from, you know, my perspective, I feel like Taylor has, at least you can tell she wanted to be with the guys. And I feel like Ariana just feels to be like she's using them. You know, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I think like it seems like giving Taylor the benefit of the doubt, I do think that there is a genuine desire for a right and healthy romantic relationship, regardless of how healthy she is or able to maintain that. That's another topic, but I think that she does actually desire that, whereas based on the choices Ariana has made, it doesn't seem like that is her goal. it seems more like she is being led around by her emotions, not realizing that her deep desire is
Yeah.
actually to
Very good
control
point.
others.
So that is our 2 seconds on Ariana Grande. Let us know if you listened to the video what you thought about it. But the main video, the video that's on everybody's tongue, that everyone and their grandmother is going to be talking about, especially by the time this comes out, I'm sure, is Lil Nas X. For those who have never listened to the podcast before, I personally don't like talking about him because he's doing these antics to get us to talk about him. But we have to talk about it because everybody's talking about it. We're commentators and something new has happened, so we must discuss it. Really quick, I want to talk about, like, I'll give a brief overview of what's happened for those who do not know. If you have not been on Twitter, really a lot of it happens on Twitter, and then we kind of bring it from Twitter to Instagram and then to TikTok because he's very active on Twitter. So a couple of things. For those that do not know, he released a video yesterday. I actually haven't seen the video yet, which I probably should have watched it before. Did you watch it?
I actually have only
Same.
seen the reels that he's posted.
Well,
I
that's
didn't
okay.
know
We
that
don't
the
have to
video
give
had
him the
dropped yet.
views. But we have seen pieces of, so we can talk about the pieces we've seen. So first thing is, he released, so he did like different visuals to start off with. One of the first things he did was he did a video of him getting out of the car saying that, like, he's about to enter his Christian era and he's going to release some gospel music. And then he did a video saying that, like, the elites are going to be mad about what he's going to say in his gospel song. So he's going to be around police a lot, kind of like almost like making fun of the idea that, like, the elites, you know, let's be honest, conservatives, we all have an aunt or uncle who's always talking about the elites. And let's be honest, I think a lot of us believe it. I think there are elites who do not have good intention. So, you know, he's playing on that. And then he released, so, you know, at that point, people were like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen. Like, oh, is he becoming a Christian? You know, in a couple group chats I was in, people were like, do you think this is real? I immediately clocked it as not being real, but I didn't say anything at first because I was like, you know what? Like, God can save anyone. That's one thing I also want us to remember. No one is too far from God. God can save anyone. But you have to want it. You have to actually be repentant. And, well, anyway, I'll talk about that in a second. So then the next thing he released is, I believe it's the, like, album cover or whatever. And it's him on a cross like Jesus. And that tells you everything you need to know right there. He is in the place of where Jesus would be on the cross. So he did that. The other thing he released is a video of him with communion. So with the bread and the juice, and, like, eating it like it's like a, I don't know, like it's like candy or something. And from a Protestant perspective, that's awful and terrible in general. Like, the communion isn't like a joke. It's not something you like, oh, I want to take communion one day. Like, oh, this juice is so good. Like, as a child, of course, you're like, oh, this is good. But, like, as you actually develop a relationship with Jesus, as you understand, like, why we do communion, like, that's not a joke. And he's old enough and mature enough to know that it's not a joke. And for people who are Catholics, I mean, that is just, for him to joke around, like, that's egregious. Like, awful. So those are kind of the things he did leading up to it. Last thing he did was he posted that he was going to go to Liberty University and he was going to get a degree in, like, biblical studies and leadership, something like that, which everybody knew it was fake because at the bottom it was signed by Jerry Falwell. And we could do an episode on that one day. If you know anything about Jerry Falwell is no longer the president of Liberty. Jerry Falwell Jr. He is no longer the president of Liberty. We don't have to get into that right now, but that is something that everybody that saw that peeped it and knew that that was fake. So anyway, he released a song. It is definitely blasphemous, and he's doing it on purpose. But why, like, should we be talking about this? Jay, let's take it away. You go first.
I'm so excited to get into this. I actually have to say the most offensive one for me was the communion video. And I you know, I know we have a very Christian audience from what I've seen. So I hope those Christians don't mind me bringing up some scripture. Yes. So I'm going to take y'all to 1 Corinthians 11 and really get into what Paul is saying about communion here. So we're going to be in verse 17. I have multiple
Amen. Go
translations in
for
my
it.
parallel Bible. But I'm gonna do this from the King James to start, because I think everybody can be quite familiar with this. So he's talking in this passage about taking the Lord's Supper and why people are actually getting sick in this community. So actually, just
Okay,
pause
no
for
problem.
dramatic effect. Did not
No,
realize I
that's
was going to
okay.
pull
That I
scripture
feel as
into
if that's
this.
the direction God's leading you in. So everybody, this time, go ahead and pull out your Bible. She's going to tell us where to turn again. Just use this break to pull out your Bible. My Bible is not near.
I'm actually going to pull it down to verse 23 because I feel like 17 was, you're doing too much. So verse 23 in King James, for I have received of the Lord that which also I delivered unto you, that the Lord Jesus, the same night in which he was betrayed, took bread, and when he had given thanks, he brake it, and said, Take, eat, this is my body, which is broken for you. This do in remembrance of me. After that same manner he took the cup when he had supped, saying, This cup is the New Testament in my blood. This do ye, as oft as ye drink it, in remembrance of me. Key verse here, 26. For as often as ye eat this bread and drink this cup, ye do shew the Lord's death till he come. Now I'm going to pull this into a different translation because I want everyone to understand what's happening here. So I'm pulling from the Amplified Classic for verse 26. For every time you eat this bread and drink this cup, you are representing and signifying and proclaiming the fact of the Lord's death until he comes again. I'm going to pull the Revised Standard. This is the great-grandfather of the English Standard Version. For those who are, I know a lot of Protestants really love the ESV. Before the ESV became the New Revised Standard Version, before the New Revised Standard was the Revised Standard Version. So this is the great-grandfather, or no, this is the grandfather of the ESV, if you love that translation. So, verse 27, whoever therefore eats the bread or drinks the cup of the Lord in an unworthy manner will be guilty of profaning the body and blood of the Lord. I'm going to actually read the verse 26 in this as well. For as often as you eat this bread and drink the cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. This is a declaration of Jesus's death and his sacrifice for you when you do this. And that's why so many Catholics, they save the bread. Well, the church saves the bread because they really believe this is actually Jesus's body. So what is happening in this congregation is people are eating and drinking communion in an unworthy manner. So if you read on, I'm going to read from verse 28 in the Amplified. Let a man thoroughly examine himself, and only when he has done so should he eat the bread and drink of the cup. For anyone who eats and drinks without discriminating and recognizing with due appreciation that it is Christ's body. I'm going to repeat that part. Anyone who eats and drinks without discriminating and recognizing with due appreciation that it is Christ's body eats and drinks a sentence, a verdict of judgment upon himself. That careless and unworthy participation is the reason many of you are weak and sickly, and quite enough of you are fallen into the sleep of death. So people in this community were sick and even died from drinking the wine, eating the bread of Christ's body in an unworthy manner, not recognizing that it was Christ's body and blood. It actually caused sickness. What do we know about the Word of God? The Word of God is the truth. So if this is true, which it is, then what Lil Nas did, extremely dishonoring of the body and blood of Jesus. I know people who love communion and will be like, oh my God, yes, communion. But their heart is, I know what Jesus did for me, which is why I'm so excited. the way that he was doing it was like gorging himself. It was not honoring the bread as Jesus's body. So this is actually calling down judgment upon himself by this action. And this is also why Catholics will not take communion if they haven't had a recent confession. Now, Protestants, because we don't confess to a priest, what we should be doing biblically is confessing our sins to each other and we will be healed, which is in the book of James. At least when Protestants take communion, maybe they are not in a state of, oh, I haven't repented of any recent sin in my heart, but I recognize this is my salvation.
And I will,
this is my Lord
really
and
quick,
Savior.
just to cut you off for a second, I want to add, in a good Protestant church will have the pastor or someone else come and speak and kind of walk through that and explain like, hey, if your heart is not right, then you need to get your heart right before you do this. Like, this is not a joke. And I remember like when in college, when there were times where like my heart was not right, I remember going to church and like just being like, no, and just passing it without taking it, because like it's something very serious. If your heart is not right, then and you take communion, like it's not a, I mean, we're reading what Jamie read from the Bible, what happens when you do that. So I just wanted to add that a good Protestant church will have someone right before communion discuss it a little, like discuss what is about to happen and encourage everyone there to make sure your heart is right. And that means, you know, asking God to forgive you if you need to forgive others. And even if you, maybe you're there with your brother and you need to confess a sin or something like that, like gives you time to do that, because it's not a joke. Communion is not a joke. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, I love the way you did that. And I love that you pointed out that in many churches, they will encourage you to be right with each other, because that's another command that we have in scripture is that, you know, if you're going to the Lord, but you have something between you and a brother, go to him, make peace, apologize. Or even if you find yourself in an unright state of heart towards someone, say there is not the option of going to them, and whether it is like receiving an apology from them that you need or apologizing to them, at least in your heart, repent for not forgiving, because unforgiveness is one thing that the Lord takes very seriously. He says that if you do not forgive these people, I will not forgive you. And the reason why we are the righteousness of God in Christ Jesus as a Christian is because God has forgiven us, not because we chose God. We were like, oh, I want Jesus. It's not because we live our lives perfectly, because if we could live our lives perfectly, the Lord never would have had to come and we could all just be Jewish. But because we couldn't do that, we needed, in order to be the righteousness of God, we had to be forgiven. And if the Lord takes forgiveness so seriously and he says, be holy as I am holy, what does that look like? It looks like having a pure heart towards others. And I heard this brilliant quote from Jason Upton. He was worshiping, and he kind of took this pause, and he said, we don't forgive others. It was something like, we don't forgive others to their benefit. We forgive others so we can see again. And if you do not forgive people who have hurt you, you will forever look at others through the lens of the hurt that you incurred from them, because you refuse to forgive them.
And that's so true. Like, I can even think of instances in my life where I know, like, looking back, I can admit, like, I harbored some unforgiveness and it affected how I treated other people who had nothing to do with what was done to me. It really does, like, it truly, like, forgiveness. And I know that we're definitely in like a culture of like, I don't forgive and I don't forget. I don't necessarily agree with, like, I think if you need to remember, it's okay to remember, because, you know, sometimes you do have to remember certain things, but like the forgiveness aspect, I do think is very important. And it's, you know, like you said, it's not even for the other person. It's because we want God to forgive us, and we want to be able to treat other people in a way that is kind and like not viewing them through the lens of someone else's mistakes, especially. And I'll be honest, what I'm thinking about is dating experiences, and I think that's so important when we go out and dating. We're not putting our experience with Bob onto Jim. When we just met Jim, we have no idea if Jim is going to treat us the same way Bob did. Jim and Bob are two separate people. That's a whole nother conversation, but like that's what it made me think of.
Yeah, and to that point of you saying sometimes you need to remember things, and how we were saying your forgiveness towards others will affect the way you see people who were not involved. Forgiveness is something that is expected of Christians. And I want to encourage anyone who does not identify as a Christian, this is not for you. It's not something you can do without Jesus. We don't do things in our own strength. We do things through Jesus, who gives us the strength and ability to do it. But forgiveness is something that's expected. Trust is earned. So if someone broke your trust and they do not do what is necessary to earn it back, they cannot be in safe relationship with you, because they're going to continue to violate you. And that will continue to be a problem both for you in that relationship and something that will be hard to recuperate from going forward and then seeing others clearly. But also treating yourself as who is worthy of my investment of time and of heart. And if someone is not proving themselves trustworthy or valuing you to earn your trust back, unfortunately, if they're doing that and they aren't changing right now, probably not safe for you or maybe even anyone to be in close relationship to them. And that's okay, because sometimes the most loving thing to do, both for yourself and for that person, is to not continue that relationship, especially if it enables them.
You can always
in
still pray for
behavior.
them. You can always still pray for them, but sometimes it's just best not to be in that relationship. All that to say, what Lil Nas X did was wrong. Somehow we got over to relationships, but that's okay. That's what happens on this show. We go down these rabbit holes, and what was said needed to be said. What else? So you were saying the most offensive thing to you was what he did with the communion. Was there anything else that you were like, oh, this is disgusting?
Well, I will say that him putting himself on the cross in the album images, again, it's the heart behind it. There are people that I've never seen anybody with the right heart do that. The only person I could compare it to would be Madonna did this. This was maybe 15 years ago on her album that she did. This was that like very 70s disco album she did with the song Jump, and there was I think 4 Minutes was on that album as well. But she actually at her concerts would put herself on the cross, and that was a big deal, like 15 maybe more so years ago. And a lot of people who were Madonna fans were like, oh, she's an artist, and like that's what she does. But of course, there was also a lot of people who were very upset by that. And I remember how upset people were. And to me, like, this was just another situation like that. And we know Madonna, we know her career and what she said and what she's like, and we know what Lil Nas has been like. And the intention was mockery. The intention was really what happens, I've noticed, when people who are demonized and are not actually in Christ, when they make that artistic decision, they want to show the Lord Jesus as a weak and defeated God. When actually that was the place that darkness was defeated and judged. So the darkness and the enemy wants to, like, he's Delulu. He wants to rewrite that moment as my victory over Jesus because I got him crucified. When really what happened was the ruler of this world has been judged through the cross. And it's also through the cross that humanity was made righteous and blameless should they choose God. So actually it was Satan's greatest defeat. And I think a lot of Christians, especially Catholics, because when you go into Catholic churches, you will see Jesus on the cross. He's still on the cross in those churches. But Christ has risen. And the Christ that is in existence now is the Christ in Revelation 19, with eyes like flames of fire, hair white as well. He's got a tattoo on his thigh that says King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He is a mighty warrior. And that is the state that Jesus Christ is now, because he has resurrected and ascended to the right hand of the Father. And so what I found in art, when it's demonically influenced, and I wanted this to be real. I wanted this conversion to be real, but it's obvious to any discerning Christian that it isn't, and it's a mockery. Again, he's doing the patterned thing that artists have done when they're in alignment with Satan's plan, and that is to make Christ look like a weak and defeated God, and not want people to see him as the victorious God, victorious over the enemy and victorious over sin on humanity's behalf.
Wow. Okay, guys, we had some crazy technical difficulties, but as you guys know, that sometimes happens when we are talking about something that is serious, that the devil doesn't want out. So back to what we were saying. I hope the last part, I'll edit everything that needs to be edited, to like get it where it needs to be. But I think the last thing I was saying was, I don't remember the Madonna thing, but I do like how you compared it, because I do think that, I think DaBaby did a video or something where he was on the cross. I even want to say, actually I don't want to say the person's name because I'm not sure, and I don't want to say that and then it's not them, and then but I know DaBaby did for sure, who is a Charlotte native. But anyway, these different artists are doing these things to push the envelope, to do something different. I also really think a lot of them were raised Christian. I know for a fact Lil Nas X's father was a pastor, or is a pastor, was a pastor. I know DaBaby, if DaBaby grew up in Charlotte, I mean, you know Charlotte, he went to a church somewhere. Whether he wanted to or not, he has attended a church. So, and I want to say Madonna did as well. So I'm also wondering, is this another way for them to like kind of rebel? I talked a little bit about this when I was talking about when Sabrina Carpenter wore that very inappropriate dress in the Catholic Church, and she was raised Catholic. I did confirm that she was raised Catholic, and so she knew how inappropriate it was. She knew that it would not be an okay thing for Catholics or just anybody who respects other people's religions. So I'm wondering if like that has something to do with it. If this is their form of like, I'm rebelling against this. Like, I'm so artsy, and like this is how you get back to the man. Like, look at me. I'm wondering if that has something to do with it. And then if it does, I'm also curious if in Muslim majority countries, for example, if they have artists that disrespect their like Muhammad or something, because that's another thing too. None of these people, I've never seen anything, and I'm sure everybody brings this up, but I'll bring it up too. I've never seen anyone do this with Muhammad. I've never seen anyone do this with Buddha. I've never seen anyone do this with any of the Hindu gods. So it's like, what? Very interesting.
Yeah, I think it's like funny that you said like, oh, artists are trying to push the envelope and they want to do something different. Let's be honest, like we've been able to come up with like 3 examples of artists doing exactly this. Like it's not
even different.
New, it's not original. It's literally the same thing it always is, which is you're obsessed with Jesus. Like just be so for real. Like you're not obsessed with the Hindu gods, you're not obsessed with Allah, you're obsessed with Jesus. Like what does this tell us? Like I saw this brilliant tweet the other day where it was like, someone was like, oh, there's so many gods. How do you know which one is real? And someone commented below, which one do you hate? Yeah. And another brilliant quote that I heard, truth by its definition is narrow. So if something is true, that means everything else is a lie. So even if you were to say choose between religions, like as a person who was looking at it logically, you would be forced to recognize by logic that the only religions that could possibly be true were the ones that claimed they were the only way.
Yes. I like that you said that. I think about this all the time when there's Christians who are like, oh, I'm a Christian, but like I have like my family members don't really fully believe it, and like I think it's okay. Like I have friends and family who don't believe it, and like I'm obviously not like Jesus, Jesus, Jesus in their face, but like if you're listening, I love you, but like I don't think it's okay. Like I want you to believe it because I believe it's the truth, and I believe it's like in the Bible, the only way to heaven is through Jesus. So like that is the only way, and so I don't understand when people say like, oh, you can kind of believe anything because literally you can't. Like, if you believe in Christianity, like there is no other way. You can't sometimes believe this or occasionally believe that. I just like this is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely. And I think like to carry it back into like what is happening with
right.
artists is like you were saying, that rebellion. There is yeah, it's just that common denominator with every artist, especially ones that tend to get famous very young and take really a generation with them because they're entrancing the kids. Whether it's Ariana, she's grabbed a lot of people when they were young to the point where even when she does something unforgivable, a lot of people are like, well, I'm still an Ariana stan. Or whether it's like my mom feels that way about Madonna. When my mom was like very, very Christian when we went to that concert and we saw her on the cross, my mom was like,
Oh,
she's an
wow.
artist because she had gotten in on that when she was young.
Yeah,
And
that's such a
I think
valid point.
a lot of things that those people do that are like, if you come on it as an adult, like I don't have a um heart connection to Ariana, to Selena, even to Taylor Swift. So when I come in and I see something that they do that's like absolutely like offensive and grotesque, I'm like, my logic brain is at the ready. It's like, that wasn't okay. I'm done with you. But when it comes to say something maybe I am more like connected to from a childhood nostalgic way, which I think that there's an interesting thing to bring up here. When you're a child, you tend to have gone through less trauma the younger you are, and that trauma kind of comes in as you just experience life, and you do so without healing properly from it. It's very easy to get traumatized when you're young because hurtful things that people do will have this lasting impact on your soul. And you're like, why can't I get over this? Because in those formative years, you are defining your outlook on life and the world. And it's not to say that this defines you, because you can actively heal from this. And you can also, I know me as a Christian, I've supernaturally healed from things that I didn't put much effort into healing from at all. But the Lord, He did that in me because that's the benefit of having the fullness of God dwelling inside of you. But I have noticed when there are certain things for myself or for others where we experience something in childhood during a time we were not traumatized, and then you experience a trauma, maybe a life altering one, maybe not even that life altering, but it actually hurts you in a deep way, even if it wasn't that big of a deal on the outside. What you will do in those adult years is you will go back to what were you into before the trauma,
Ooh, that's interesting.
which is why I think you see so many Disney adults that are millennials.
Yeah.
Because whether the like trauma was like a boy didn't like me back or made fun of me when I was like 10 years old or whatever, um they don't realize they're doing this, but they're going to watch and connect with things that really got in their hearts before trauma was introduced.
Mm.
And so there's like a real strategy here with the entertainment industry to get kids invested in things that are at the point where they get interested, they are innocent and they are joyful, and they get this at a young age, knowing that most people by the age of 14, by the age of 16, will have some kind of major life trauma that they would not have seen rightly or healed from properly, or even altered the way that they view themselves in the world. And they want to go back to a more innocent time. How do they do that? Those memories are triggered by those pop culture things that they connected with before trauma was a part of their life.
Wow. That is a really good analysis. And that makes a lot of sense. Because I'm thinking of a particular artist. I'm not going to say their name because now I'm a little embarrassed. But there was a particular artist that like I really probably should not give as much slack as I do sometimes. But I did discover her in middle school, and I felt like we were so similar. And like right before, you know, some sad things, nothing like super crazy, just like extra intense bullying before that happened. And I just remember like, oh, this person's music, this person's story was so good to me that like I really do enjoy some of the stuff. And like sometimes I call them out when it's necessary, but I will admit sometimes I've let things slide and I'm just kind of like, oh, whatever about some things. I think that's a very good analysis. And I also want to add, we're not necessarily saying Disney adults are bad or anything like that. We're just explaining like what it is because, you know, Disney adults are very controversial. You know, we're not saying they're bad. We're just explaining like how this could happen. And like, I think also realizing, because like now that, at least for myself, I know that what you're saying makes a lot of sense. Now that I know that, maybe I can like do some, you know, work within myself. Just think about like, okay, this is the truth. So then what do I need to work on so that I'm continually doing things that honor God? Because at the end of the day, like our whole purpose, like our purpose as Christians specifically, is to honor God and is to try to be holy. We're never going to be perfect, but we should be making decisions that that make us holy. That is the goal. So if we have to choose between, you know, doing X, Y, and Z that's wrong, or doing something that might make us, that we feel as if, oh, this might make me a little sad, but like this is what God has called us to. That's a bad example. Let me just like blatantly say an example. For example, I think of is like hooking up in a sexual way with somebody. It is better at that time. It might feel great to do, but that's not going to make you holy. So it's better to do the other option, which is to not do it, to call your friend, to, you know, get out of the car, to get out of the bed, even, you know, unwrap your arms around his face. I think these are the steps that you can take. So that's all I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely want to piggyback on that. There's absolutely no shame in being, whether it's you're a Disney adult or whether you're like my like happy place is Wizards of Waverly Place or Hannah Montana. And like for me it's a little different because I'm a little bit older, and so for me like that happy place is Olsen Twins movies.
Oof, love them.
Whatever like your happy place is, there is no shame to that, and also there's nothing wrong with enjoying those things. Right. But I think two things. One, there's a problem when you can't separate the art from the person, because then you allow that person's current behavior to shape your morals and values. And while we love what they've done in the past, we recognize that the choices that they are making, whether it's in their art or in their current lives, are not right. And we cannot stand by those choices, even if we say love what they've done in the past or even love them as a person. You can absolutely love someone without approving of their actions, and you can pray for them, just in the same way that you would pray for someone else you might know who maybe went astray in some recent times. And the other thing that I do want to say is, if you notice that, oh, like I am trying to escape my current situation by diving into old pop culture, there is a not a problem in a shameful way, but in the sense of God doesn't want you not whole. He paid for your wholeness. Shalom, peace, is wholeness. It's not just wholeness of like, oh, exterior situations are peaceful. It's actually wholeness of heart and of mind, of your soul. When Jesus came and paid for your healing with his wounds, he did not just pay for you to be physically healthy. He paid for you to have a healthy soul and mind. Or even in, I think this is 2 John, beloved, I pray that you would prosper even as your prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers. If you are trying to escape your current life by diving into old pop culture as an escape, that is a sign that your soul needs some love. It needs some care. It's not like, oh, like, why did you like try to escape? Like, that is totally natural. Your heart is hurting. And a lot of people don't realize that their heart is hurting when they try to, whether it's watch something, listen to something, whatever. But God didn't want you to remain unhealed. So if you have noticed that you have a place where you're kind of stuck and then trying to escape, that escape it's just that, it's an escape. You should be depending on the Lord to heal you so you can be present. God doesn't want you to be stuck in a past moment of when you felt like your life was idyllic. God wants you whole and right now so you can be present with those around you. That's the people that you can affect. Loving yourself right now and loving the people around you well is something you can only do in the present moment. And the enemy wants you to be stuck in the past, even if it's a place of comfort. It's actually keeping you from the true comforter. The Holy Spirit is called the comforter in the word, the true comforter who can actually bring the full wholeness to your heart and mind. And this is a big topic, and I do want to like sum this up because that's something that I could go on about providing resources for. But now I've put you, if this is you, on a lookout for searching for methods or ministries, or even ideally you would go to the Lord yourself and say, okay, my heart is hurting. I see that now. Lord, I need you to fix it because I don't know what to do about it. And I think that that's the best way to approach it, is to humbly come before him, recognizing that he already paid for that wholeness.
Amen. Wow. We have talked, well, because of the cutout, I don't know how long we've talked, but we have talked about Lil Nas X maybe 5 minutes, but then the rest has been so many other things that I do think was like needed to be said and it was necessary. And I guess to wrap it all up, Lil Nas X is doing something that very predictable, unoriginal, not cute, I guess is a good way to say it. It's obviously a mockery, and I think as Christians, like, I don't think it's wrong for us to call it out, but I don't think we should, spend the next like 6 weeks doing think pieces, because that's giving him what he wants and that's like giving him the attention that he's desiring. And I think this is a time for us to call out what is wrong and what is evil and then to move away from it. I think once we've discussed with your friends, I don't think there's anything wrong with talking about discussing with your friends. Once you've done that, move away from what is evil and do something that's a little bit more positive. But I do think it's okay to call it out. I don't think, everybody can talk about it. I don't have a problem with that. I just think like 6 weeks have passed. We can't keep giving him the views and things like, because that's one of the reasons why he's doing it, to get the views, because he knows how upset as Christians we are. And I'll be honest, I'm going to have the words Lil Nas X in the title to get the views. I'm a Christian though. Like, so the money's going to go to, no, I'm just joking. But like, that's just how it has become, how it is. And like, that's just a fact.
Well, what we've said is really relevant to people who are thinking about this topic right now. And I think regardless of how on topic it felt or sounded, regardless, it is a information that couples with and was inspired by this subject matter.
Yes. And everything that was said, I definitely feel in my heart needed to be said. So I hope everyone got something good out of that. We're going to now move on to another topic, because like I said, we still have a bajillion other things to talk about. The next thing I want to talk about is our resident new influencer, Gypsy Rose. If you have not listened to last week's episode, we talked about a little bit, me and Savannah, and I think I said something along the lines of like, I'm happy, she got out. She needs to get the healing that she needs. She also probably should not be out and about doing all these press tours, because it's not healthy for her. She really needs, it would be good for her to take a break from limelight. Obviously she can't have a real job, so if she wants to sell her story, sure. And then the other thing I said is like what the internet gives, it also takes away. On TikTok already, there's people saying, I don't think this girl should be out. I think I've seen actually quite a few videos lately saying that she's a manipulator, because what the internet gives, it takes away. And for someone who all she knows is like being in the limelight and everybody praising her, I don't know how mentally, at least for her mental health, how positive seeing the turn is going to be. But anyway, those were my thoughts. Jamie, Jay, I would love to hear yours.
So I got in a deep dive of video content of Gypsy within this past week, and at first I can see why everybody's very charmed with her, because everything that she says is like very on the surface correct.
Oh, you said
She's
on the
very
surface.
well
Okay.
camera trained.
Yes.
Something that it's weird because there was something she said that I was like, I don't know whether I'm impressed with that, if she really believes that I'm impressed, but if she is saying that, it was so brilliantly manipulative.
Oh.
If she said this and didn't believe it. And what she said was, an interviewer asked her, do you blame the drugs for your participation in your mother's murder? Because she had admitted to being high when it happened. She was like, no, I don't. I don't blame the drugs. I don't blame anything. And she was just very adamant to say, like, I take responsibility for what happened.
I have noticed that. And really quick to what you said, if she truly is taking responsibility, that is good. I mean, that's what we want. If she truly isn't, that you're right. That is very like intentionally manipulative. Interesting.
It was very smart. And obviously she's very press trained because she's been through this for a long time of doing on-camera interviews. And lawyers will train their clients like, hey, you're going to be in front of a judge and a jury. This is how, like, it's down to like psychological, like, wear this color because people will perceive you better, act like this. When this question is asked, this is the correct response. And so to me, even though at first I was like, wow, she seems like she's in a really good place and she's really healthy. And I really began to notice, and what was the giveaway for me was the frequency of her voice. And she does have this very childlike sing-songy voice, which was something that you could see in older clips of her with her mother that she was also doing. Keep in mind, like, she's even said this, that she learned that manipulation from her mother.
I've seen a lot of those videos, people saying that she learned from the great manipulator.
Exactly. And so she has not only been trained as like, this is the lens through which she looks at all of life through, but also her mother obviously needing validation from many, many people. And most people need validation, and most people need that to feel loved and to feel seen and to feel worthy. And I'm so sorry to tell you again, for any non-Christian listeners, that there's really only one way to get that, and that is from Jesus Christ. But when people are wounded, that will exacerbate the natural need for that that's in everyone's soul, because we were built to be in relationship with God. But when you get hurt, those needs are amplified. And her response is, okay, like, she's not conscious of this, but her soul is like, I need validation. I need to feel seen. I need to feel loved. What do I do? And then this is in your unconscious mind. It goes through your subconscious and into your conscious mind. And you're like, how do I get my needs met? Well, I'm going to manipulate others for their attention, for their love, for their finances, for their sympathy. And so this is the framework that she has viewed life through from a very young age. I personally do not believe or see where she's gotten healing from any kind of, whether it was a psychiatrist or counseling. From a worldly perspective, we know that she's not necessarily like a Christian in the sense that, like, she's like had an experience that she's talked about, like, oh, I was saved and this is my experience, and this is how I received healing through that experience. So when I look at this, I'm like, okay, so if you don't have one of those life-changing experiences that broke off manipulation as a means to receive love, then you're still partnered with it, which means that you still have this need for that attention, which she got used to as a child because she experienced a lot of that. And that was her normal, experiencing a lot of people fawning over her because of her illness. So if that's what she got used to, and then that's being taken away from her, her mind, without any healing, is going to go, what do I need to do to get that back? And she's been brilliant at working the press, and the way that she has been, even like with the way that she's chosen to deal with the publicity, and like, I'm a very shy person, like seeming like she doesn't want it. She's playing this game of elongating the attention even through that. And like I said, her voice was the dead giveaway. I noticed the way that she spoke, and I was like, I don't think this is her real voice. I think that this is the manipulation voice that she's used even from a child, that she doesn't even know that she's actually changing her voice. She's so unaware of it. But to me, it just instantly reminded me of Paris Hilton's public persona voice versus when you watch her on her show, the way she talks when she's with her family versus when she's like, all right, I'm going out for a press event, which to me is like, okay, Paris knows what she's doing. She knows that her character
she's
and what she
character.
presents to the world is like, that's a character she's playing. She's not trying to manipulate. It's more of like
acting.
To me, I give her a pass because she created a character. She's in that character. A lot of artists do this. Lana Del Rey does this. So when Paris does this and puts an affectation on her voice, that is understandable. But for me, when I see Gypsy, it's so ingrained in her that her manipulation is 24/7 to the point where she doesn't realize even the way that I speak is not the way I was created to speak. Everything comes through the lens of manipulation. And I just wanted to make everybody aware of that. Just shed light on it. Like, from every angle, this girl is being a master manipulator, and it's actually very impressive.
I do not know where I stand on that. I've seen videos about that. And it's so funny you said the voice thing, because someone else said that they can hear when she goes in and out of the voice. I don't know if I can. I don't know where I stand, but I hear what you're saying, and I will say that, like, I'm definitely not, like, what was it? What were people saying? Like, shots tipsy for Gypsy. I'm definitely not on that. I'm definitely not on, like, queen mother. I don't feel that way about her either. I want to not believe that she's manipulative, but I have seen a lot of proof, or I've seen a lot of arguments that she is. So I want to not believe it, but I mean, I think you made some very good points. Some of the TikToks I've seen, people just pointing things out. Some people were saying some of those things about her current husband, like, and, you know, I'm trying really hard not to judge him because he seems like such a sweet, nice teddy bear. I do find it weird that he developed a relationship with someone who's in jail. I do think that's strange. Also, he was fired from his job for dating her. So he literally, like, all of his money, all of the things are now relying on her and things like that, because, like, no school is going to hire him again. No school's going to hire him. I wouldn't want him to teach my children. No offense, like, I don't know who he is. Like, he could be a nice person, but, like, you're married to a no, I wouldn't want that personally. So, like, it is all very it's all very strange, and I just don't, unless she stops now, takes a break, gets healing, you know, meets Jesus, unless she does something, like, now, not, like, 6 months from now, but, like, now, I don't really see this ending well. I'll say that. I definitely don't see this ending in, like, a sweet little, like, oh goodness, who is someone who had, I cannot remember her name, but she was kidnapped, and she does a lot of tours, and she speaks at schools. The woman who was she was a child, the kidnapper came into her bedroom at night, took her, and she was missing for like 6 months. I cannot remember her name, but she does a lot of, like, good speeches, and she does a lot of, I don't see it ending in the same way like her experience did. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't have like too much to say. I think I've said what needed to be said.
Yeah.
I hate that this is a manipulation game because I want to like her.
Yeah.
And she makes herself seem so healthy. She seems really sweet, but I unfortunately I know better.
Yeah. Let us know. What do you guys think? Do you think that she is being manipulative? Whew, I can say that word. Do you think that, are you still, tipsy for Gypsy, or has the tide kind of changed for you? Let us know in the comments. Okay, next story. So we have like 5 more stories, but I'm sure we're almost at an hour now. I at least want to do one more, maybe 2 more, but I at least want to do this other one that I said we were going to talk about. This is from sorry, y'all. From CBS News. I really want to talk about this because I have lots of thoughts. A Chicago man sues over disparaging post on Facebook group about dating. Okay, here we go. A Chicago man is suing after his name and photo were included in a disparaging post on a popular Facebook group called Are We Dating the Same Guy? There are several Facebook Are We Dating the Same Guy Facebook groups, including the one that is local to Chicago, Naperville, and Elgin. Nico D'Ambrioso said that the Facebook group's local chapter has ruined his reputation, and he is hoping a new Illinois law will help. Filed Monday in the U.S. District Court in Chicago, D'Ambrioso's lawsuit names dozens of women, one defendant's male relative, and several tech companies after posts started circulating in the Facebook group with his name, photo, and harassing text messages he reportedly sent to women. Interesting. Many of the defendants in this lawsuit are moderators of the Facebook group, though one woman told us she is not sure if she's listed on the Chicago chapter and says she's no longer active in the groups. D'Amoroso's attorneys liken his reputation now to a digital scarlet letter. They want Facebook and Meta to intervene and provide strict moderation. Quote, "We've been working on this for several months. We've tried everything but sue these people. We tried sending them registered letters, sending them cease and desist letters to no avail. And ultimately we had to take this recourse because our hand was forced and it wouldn't take down these posts," said the attorney Daniel Nicoluk. So, you care if I go first on this one?
Go for it.
Okay. So, I'm in, I think, 2 or 3 Are We Dating the Same Guy Facebook groups. I'm in 2 for Charlotte because Charlotte has one that's like, they call it one that's censored and the one that's not, which the one that's, anyway, I don't want to get too, because I don't want to get kicked out. I don't want to get too into it. And then I'm in one for a town that I thought I was moving to, but whatever, I said. Okay, so I'm in these 3 Are We Dating the Same Guy Facebook groups. I think that the original goal, for those who do not know, the original Are We Dating the Same Guy Facebook group's goal was, if, let's say, I met this guy on an app, I went on a date with him, and he assaulted me. Could be physically, could be sexually. Like, I then post, this is who I went on a date with. This is the information. This is what happened. You guys be careful, be safe. He uses multiple names on the apps. I've seen, like, and I think that is a good and noble idea, because there have been times where girls have, in the Facebook groups, I have seen the positive. So, like, things like that in the groups. Especially because now, realistically, unfortunately, a lot of ways that we're dating is online. That's just a fact. A lot of ways we're dating is online. So I do think that's a good safety precaution. That's important. Now, these groups, because of just how society is, can turn toxic pretty quickly. I've also seen where someone will post a picture, be like, "Hey, I just matched with this guy, NET," which I actually don't like that. Unless you already have a red flag. And then if you already have a red flag, maybe you shouldn't be going on a date with him anyway. But unless you already have a red flag, if it's just like a regular guy, I really don't think you should be posting NET, because that's like one of the things, but whatever. They'll post NET. And then you'll get some girl that'll be like, "Yeah, I dated him 15 years ago when we were in middle school, and he cheated on me with like the girl that sat next to him. And his brother," like, I legit saw this once, "and his brother is like a meth addict, and his mother like slept with the whole time." And it's like, wait a minute, this has absolutely nothing to do with what she posted. And if you dated him 15 years ago, he could be a different person. Like, I think if it was like 3 years or more, like, they could be a completely different person. If you dated them last month, okay. But like 3 years or more, they could be a completely different person. There's no need to like add any of your commentary, unless, once again, maybe like if he essayed you, if he graped you. I'm saying that just to not trigger anything. Unless he did something like that to you, then like, sure. I think that even if it was like 3 years ago, I think maybe saying something about that, I don't think there's a problem with that. But like, he cheated on me 3 years ago. Or like, another one I think is a little crazy is he ghosted me. And it's like, I don't know if that's like worthy of, ruining his reputation because he ghosted you. But here's the thing. in a normal, like, healthy society, and let's say I post that and like a bunch of different girls said, oh, he ghosted me. Oh, I dated him 15 years ago. I would see that and be like, okay, so then he's fine. Like I wouldn't think too much of that. But what happens is like the girls will screenshot that, send it to the guy, and then it just becomes this whole big thing. And like people don't understand, like, you don't have to, like, okay, if the only thing, his only problem is he ghosted some girl 2 years ago, then you just keep going, like it's not that big of a deal. But people, like, we don't live in a normal society anymore, so people are doing all these other things to it. So I definitely see how it can become toxic. There needs to be better monitors, but I just don't know the solution to that, because I don't know. I just don't know the solution. What are your thoughts when you first heard this story?
Well, first of all, I think that, I've had a situation being on those Facebook groups where I actually did see somebody that I'd gone on a date with.
Ooh.
And yeah, I think it was like a first or second date or something. And there was a person who had posted him and was like, hey, I just went out with this guy, or I'm going out with him tonight or whatever. Does anyone know anything? And my friend tagged me in it because I wasn't in the group. But it ended up being so much drama because something that, and it shouldn't have been, because the reality of the situation was I had gone on like 2 dates tops with this guy when this happened. It was either 1 or 2 dates. Or it was either 1 or 2 or 1 and we planned for a second. I can't remember. And he was going to go out with someone else the following week. We were not exclusive. We had just met.
Yeah.
Realistically, we had spent 2 to 3 hours together total.
Okay. Nothing serious.
Nothing serious. And I think people need to understand, and I think girls have really like differing standards for what a bad thing to do versus what's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because we have not learned proper boundaries within dating. And I always highly recommend this book for anybody, for dating, Christian or non-Christian. It is a Christian perspective book, but it's called Boundaries in Dating by Mark Townsend and Henry Cloud. It is brilliant, and it really levels you out, because I think, especially with the Christian approach to dating, there's this, like those memes that have the first date, coffee, second date, like, and it's a picture of an engagement.
Right.
And Christians do this insane thing where they're like, oh, I just knew, and they're always looking for signs, and they forget to just be like discerning and take your time to get to know someone. And to make this comparison, I've had situations with friendships where the Lord even said, like, this is a very important friend that I want you to connect with. I even remember when I met you, the Lord was like, this is the person in this group that I'm most excited about for you to be connected to. But in that, I didn't go like, let's get like best friendship necklaces, like let's get each other's name tattooed to each other.
Right.
I didn't do that. I've had other friends of the Lord really emphasize, and they became like a number one friend to me. They became a best friend, but it didn't start out that way, and it didn't rush into that. Even though I had a good sense and a peace about them, and the Lord did emphasize that relationship, I still had to go through process just like they had to, where trust was built and relational equity was built. And in order to get to know someone and let them in, you have to have an alignment of what is happening in the natural, which a lot of Christians can really over spiritualize, but what is happening in the natural, and having that at pace with what's happening in the spiritual and in the emotional part of your being.
Mm-hmm.
And so as that depth develops, you don't rush that process, and you don't go ahead in any one specific area. Like I said, like, just like I wouldn't give you a BFF necklace the first time I met you, even though I knew we would be close. I'm also not going to get any engagement jewelry for someone who I'm just meeting either. I'm just going to let that develop and trust God in that process. And so I think that there is even like a secular aspect to this, because of what the film industry has taught a lot of people about dating, where it's like everything's so like faded, from like even like the early 2000s film Serendipity, where it just makes it seem like, oh, it's so like serendipitous, it's so faded that John Cusack should end up with Kate Beckinsale. And pretty much every rom-com has that type of angle of this like faded love story. And I think a lot of women whether they realize it or not, that is a lens that they're looking at their own dating life through, rather than just being realistic and taking their time and getting to know someone. And in that, I want to say, relating it to the situation that I went through, where at first I was like, oh my God, like he's seeing someone else. And then I was like, actually, he didn't do anything wrong, because we were still getting to know each other. And eventually, like, he did want me to be exclusive, and that didn't work out for separate reasons. And it wasn't because he was cheating. It was just because we had different values. And I was honestly too Christian for him. He was like Christian light, and I was like Christian intense, which if you've been watching this whole episode, you kind of got that.
Yeah. And that's okay.
And that's fine. No hard feelings.
Yeah.
He did not do anything wrong in that. Regardless of how I screeched at him, sorry. But I think that, like, women are expecting, and I think also very untrusting, which makes sense, but they're expecting to get to know someone and like really put them in a box too quickly, when really a lot of the questions that women are asking in this group should wait until they actually have had their own journey with this person and have sensed what they have, whether they've sensed things that are like, oh, everything seems to be going really well, but am I wrong? Or, hey, I've sensed a few things that might be a problem, and then post like, hey, I've been going out with this guy for a month, thinking about exclusivity. Does anybody have any tea on him? And then, of course, like you said, if something happened 15 years ago, if I were judged by what I did 15 years ago, like, I was awful. Like, honestly, up until maybe like 7 years ago, I'm like, I don't know that girl.
No, I feel you on that. Some things in college, I'm like, ooh, why did I do that? Please don't judge me from that.
Yeah, and we grow as
Right.
humans too, and we have to give grace to men. I think a lot of women do not give grace to men or allow them to grow, and I can imagine how frustrating it is as a man in today's world to be held up to these crazy
Yeah.
standards, when there are certain things that even I do. Like, I'm fine to ghost someone if I've only gone out with you once. I
Yeah.
don't really owe you an explanation. I ghost a lot of people if I've only gone out with you once. I think that's fine. Now, what's crazy is if you're exclusive with them and then they ghost you. Now, tell me about that one.
Yeah. So I agree. So really quick about the ghosting thing. I actually agree. There are times where if we've been talking for a month plus, don't ghost me. But if it's like we've been talking for like a week and you're like, I'm not really feeling this person, I don't have a problem being ghosted. And to be honest, sometimes like I'd rather you ghost me than to like list out, actually, X, Y, this is why I don't like you. Sometimes I'd rather just not hear it. Like, I've had someone do that before and I'm like, you know what? I don't feel better. Please don't ever do this to any other girl. Like, now I feel worse. So I don't necessarily think that the ghosting thing, like, I agree, like, ghosting it's not the end of the world, and I really don't think it should be used as a negative. And then to kind of talk also about, like, with the what you said about Christian dating, I used to fall into that category. I legit thought if you went on a date with someone, you had to see them as your spouse. So every time I would go on a date, I was like, oh, this is my spouse, so I must act a certain way, I must do a certain thing. Like, because I grew up in the Christian, like, dating, to me, that was dating to marry. Not dating to marry, to me, was like date, then marriage. So, like, I was going into dates, especially when I think about, like, my previous ex, I was going into dates thinking, like, oh, this is my husband, so I'm going to act a certain way. I'm going to do this a certain way. My future is literally right here. This random man that I met at church that does not know me from Mary is my husband. So I want to do X, Y. And, like, you're right. We put too much of pressure on men and on dating as Christians because, part of it is, I'll admit, like, I really wanted to be married before 25, and then I wanted to be married before 30. So, like, I wanted that. Like, I also, once again, I was Christian. So, we're not having sex till marriage. So obviously you're Christian, you get what happens with that. So, like, there were just all these, like, unnecessary pressures when really I should have just gotten to know him better. And, like, he fell a lot. And, like, I personally think we both fell into the whole, like, we're Christians, we must get married type of thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I also want you guys to hear me, like, there's nothing wrong with that. But I also always say on this podcast, like, marriage is a big deal. Like, I know right now, especially in Christian circles, everyone's like, get married, have babies, get married, have babies, and do that. Absolutely do that. But like, take who you marry very, very seriously. And I think because we're in such a time where everybody's so lonely. We're in a time where everyone, at least I can say for myself, aside from like the friend group that you met, that how we all met, aside from them, all my friends are married and a good chunk of them are having babies already. So like, you see your friends doing this. Our whole culture, even though they say like our culture hates relationships, not really, because like every single TV show you'll ever watch, the main plot point is like dating and marriage. Like that's the main plot point, which I just picked up on that recently, like, because oh no, the society hates marriage, society hates dating. No, every character, especially a woman, her main objective is to date someone, no matter what the show is, whether it's a positive dating, like trying to get married, or like even hookups. But like, so you see that all the time. So I like, it makes sense for us to be so caught up on like, okay, this, you're right, we're looking for all these signs. Okay, this has to be my spouse. I remember there were times where like I would go on dates. This was like back in like when I was in Virginia Beach and I was dating like on the apps and stuff. I'd go on and I'd be like waiting for them to say like a word or something, like, okay, this is who God has for me. Even the problem, I thank God, I feel like I've been healed from this, but like, especially when I first moved back to Charlotte and I was like really insecure about being single and stuff, especially because all my friends were dating and married and stuff like that. You go into any room, any boys, okay, I have to be my best because my husband could walk through the door right now. Okay, let me look around. Okay, there's a boy there. All right, you're in a restaurant, the door opens, your eyes automatically go, is that a boy? That could be my husband. So like that mindset is in us. So we just put all of these unrealistic expectations on like a coffee date, on just a getting to know you lunch, like, and we have to flip that because we're hurting each other during that. And then the last thing I'm going to say is I was listening to a podcast, cannot tell you what podcast it was, cannot even tell you who the host and stuff like that was, but this really stuck with me. They said, as Christians, when we're dating, we should not be leaving the guy or girl we're dating broken. We should be leaving them like better, or at least exactly the same. A lot of times we are like breaking our brothers and sisters in Christ dating them because we put too much expectations on them. We are being we're expecting these men to he first meets you and you're expecting him to buy you a car. I don't know, it's outrageous, but you guys know what I'm trying to say. Or we are Christians even cheat, and that's a terrible thing to say, but there are Christians that cheat. We are doing all these things and we're leaving our fellow brothers and sisters broken. But like, if we're dating and getting to know each other, we really should be leaving them better off, or at least exactly the same. So that was my thoughts.
I agree. And I've actually had dating experiences that someone left me better off and was a catalyst for healing for me.
Whoa. What was that?
So
like?
That is something that is possible and is something that we should be aiming for.
Yeah.
And I was actually really honored by him in the process. And even, I kind of started out messy because that was the first time I had dated someone well. But I think if we focus as we date on, am I treating this person like a friend I care about? And 2, am I honoring them in this process? Even if we don't get it perfect, we're going to end up somewhere in the vicinity of loving people like Christ, which is what we're called to do. And so I do think that also on the note of you saying, you're looking for like the voice of the Lord and a confirmation. And it's funny because even people outside of Christ will be looking for signs. And I know so many people, I've seen so many people, they're looking for like signs from around them or from the universe or whatever. I think we need to remember that love is a choice. And whether we blame the universe or we blame God, and say like, oh, this was your choice for me, and say something happens later on in the marriage where this person is not living up to a standard of love, whether it's our own expectation or even the expectation that God puts on men, because those expectations are very high. In the Christian faith, husbands are called to lay down their lives for their wives, like Christ laid his life down for the church. It's a life of sacrifice towards the woman. And so they're actually held to higher standards than women are in that situation. And that's a whole nother conversation.
We can
But
do a whole
even when
episode on
someone
that.
doesn't meet those standards, if we were to say, well, God, you said, or universe, you said, this was my person. So rather than making it a choice like, oh, I choose to love this person because this is the person that I want to love, want to marry, want to spend the rest of my life with, you could get into a place of God said or universe said, therefore, now that I've been hurt, I am blaming God for, if this was his choice rather than mine, I'm blaming God for this person's actions, or I'm blaming the universe. And clearly this is like my fate to have gone through this hurt, rather than taking responsibility and saying, I chose this person because I believed that they were a worthy investment, and I chose to love them and they chose to love me. And I take responsibility for whatever happens in that relationship between me and that person. And I'm not putting wrong responsibility on God as far as forcing me to choose someone, or even on the other person. It's like just that maturity of saying, like, I chose to love. Sometimes that doesn't work. Ideally, that person would be surrendered to the Lord and would love the other person in the marriage well. But when they don't meet those expectations, we cannot be blaming God for choosing our partner or the universe or whatever. We have to actually realize love is a choice, and God made that choice, that free will, part of the good thing about being a human and made in the image of God. That just like he chose to love us, we get to choose who we love as well.
That was good, Jamie. That was good. I think that's so we can segue into like one more story. Oh my goodness, we're almost at an hour, and this is like the second half of the. Okay, we'll just do segue to one more story, and then like you should definitely come on again. Okay.
I'm sorry I'm so long-winded.
No,
I just get so excited to be with you and talk.
Literally not you. It's us. Like I honestly like I wanted to say more to what you just said, but I'm like it's us. It's definitely not just you. We have a lot to say, and that's okay. Okay. Let me. So our next story is I'm gonna play a TikTok, and it is relationship wise. But there was like legit 3 more stories that we were supposed to do. Maybe we can do like I don't know. We can talk about it off air. I was gonna say maybe we can do it in the middle of the week and do like a special episode. But yeah, so I'm gonna play this TikTok and then we're gonna talk about it. We're not gonna take too long. We're going to give our opinion on it, and then I want you guys to put your opinion as well. Okay. Here we go.
To say that her boyfriend's sister is getting married the same weekend as me. She found out a friend of 10 years, boyfriend of 2 years, known about friend's wedding for 7 months, then finds out about boyfriend's sister's wedding on the same day, and tells friend of 10 years that she will be attending boyfriend's sister's wedding. And the advice is that while you're allowed to be just...
Okay. So that is the story. So that video, I couldn't find the original video because I think she took it down because the advice she gave was horrible in my opinion. I never let her know. So that was just a clip of the original video. Would you like to go first on your thoughts on this debacle?
Sure. Well, I would first like to state that her boyfriend is not her fiance.
Very true.
And so when you have a friendship of 10 years and that is your chosen friend, this is going to be a relationship that ideally, if it's 10 years, it's probably going to be a lifelong friendship versus a boyfriend who they're not engaged, they have not chosen each other for life. And in addition, it's someone connected to that person who you've not chosen for life. I don't think that you should be giving a boyfriend husband privileges.
And that is how I think this connects to the conversation we were just having. I don't know if these people are Christians. I'll just say, like, as a Christian, like, growing up, in my head, when I was younger, I would think, well, this is my husband. I need to go along with, like, my husband. And I think sometimes we get in these little, like, I don't know, like you so badly want to be with someone and you stop, in my opinion, you kind of stop thinking like a human. And I like that is just so crazy to me that someone who's not even your spouse, like if they were husband and wife, I could see how it was a dilemma. I would be able to see how it was a dilemma. A boyfriend? How is that even a dilemma? And what's crazy to me, sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good.
What's crazy to me is like they don't have to go together. One can go to one and the other can go to the other. It's not like you both have to be like together wherever you go. You guys can just go to separate events. That's so wild.
Yeah, and I also felt to bring this up. A lot of people, when it comes to family, granted, neither of these people are family, but I think that this does add some color to the way it may be perceived. A lot of people will use that quote, blood is thicker than water, when it comes to choosing family over friendships. And a lot of people use this quote wrong. They are thinking that blood refers to family, blood is thicker than water, which is somehow representative of friendship. But the fullness of that quote is actually the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of childbirth.
Interesting. Okay, keep going.
Meaning that who you are born into, that is actually the water. Blood of the covenant is your chosen friendships, because in ancient times, a lot of relationships would be covenanted and ratified by blood. And I could go into a whole story about how people actually, in all cultures in ancient times, would use blood covenants with animals, even within ancient, like Sumerian culture before the Mosaic Law was put into place. Blood was used as a way to bring someone into a familial relationship with someone. And so friendships that were of great importance to people were often put into covenant that was ratified by blood. So this quote of blood is thicker than water means actually that you will be more loyal to your chosen family than the family that you were born into. And to me, what is happening with a 10-year friendship is this is clearly, I chose you to be in my family.
Yeah.
Versus a boyfriend, which has clearly been in her life less than 10 years, is at this point neither blood nor water.
True. Valid.
So again, circling back to do not give this man husband privileges. And you also, like you said, you don't need to be together. You don't need to be tied at the hip. He is not your husband. He is your boyfriend. And so I personally think that dishonoring a covenanted friendship of 10 years is worse than a newer relationship that is not yet chosen to be in a covenant relationship. Dishonoring the first one even threatens the future of the second, because how do you treat your covenanted relationships?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good
This
point.
person has 10 years relational equity with this person versus someone who has not made any commitments or built that same relational equity. I think that at this point, the honor goes to the long friendship rather than to, again, a boyfriend.
Yeah.
People need to realize that boyfriends are not husbands. Treating a fiance like a husband? Yes. Treating a boyfriend like a husband? No. Girls are really bad about this, like allowing certain relationships, newer relationships, be they romantic or friendship, into their heart in a way that they have not earned.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to protect ourselves from being hurt, we have to pace ourselves in those relationships equal to the amount of trust that has been built up over time.
And I mean, and just to piggyback off of that, the Bible says to guard your heart. And I think when we think of that, is in Proverbs, it talks about guarding your heart. And I know when I was younger, I would think about that like, oh, don't watch scary movies. And like, I do think that is a good example of guarding your heart. But now as I'm older and like more mature and like wiser and I'm, at gaining age or whatever, I do think that has a lot to do with it as well. Guard your heart. Like, I think when you start to put husband privileges, treating a boyfriend like a husband, it really hurts your heart. It can hurt your heart more, whether it's a good or a negative thing. It hurts your heart more when situations happen. So I do think like
Mhm.
you're making a very good point about not treating your boyfriend like a husband. And last thing I'm going to say is like, if this is your best friend, ideally this is her one and only wedding. You do not want to not be there for your best friend. Like that is just so, I can't imagine like, I've had 3 really, really, really good friends get married. They're probably like my closest friends. All 3 of them have gotten married in the past, I think it was like 1 a year in the past 3 years, and I have been in their weddings, and like once or twice there's been situations where like I might have had like a speaking engagement or I had something else, but like their wedding day, I would not like, there's nothing that would get in the way of me being there for their wedding day. Even if it was something like, even if I had like a huge like, okay, we're gonna pay you $3,000 just to do X. I can't do that for a friend on their wedding, because ideally, once again, it's their one and only wedding. Um, and I just think that I think when we talk about how people are so lonely, kind of leads back to what we were talking about earlier, how people are so lonely and like they're kind of sad and they want, companionship. I think a huge problem is people aren't being friends. Like if you are not a friend to someone, they're not going to be a friend to you, and it's going to make you even lonelier. So like if you don't have like that loyalty to your friend to attend the wedding, like I can tell you can feel lonely, because like if you're not going to do that for someone, like a wedding, once again, the most important day of someone's life other than the day they give their life to Jesus is their wedding. And it's like, you're not going to do that, be there for someone. I cannot imagine like how close you are in your heart to them if you would even consider not attending like their wedding, attend your friendship. That's just so crazy to me.
Yeah, I agree. You are dishonoring also the covenant that they are making.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point too. Like the people that the weddings I've been in, they're people who like I respect them. I respect their spouse, and I do like stand before God and say, "Hey, I support this marriage. Like I that's why I'm up here. Like I support them and I want to be there for them, ups and downs through their marriage. I want their marriage to be until heaven. Like that is their goal. That is my goal, and sitting next to them." And I don't know if that girl was going to be, but I mean, if it's 10 years friendship, I'm assuming she's also in the wedding. And that's just so crazy to me that you wouldn't be there for your friend.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I think that if that girl gave any advice like contrary to what was given here, it just was not the best move. I think they should go to the wedding separately. They are not a couple that
Yeah.
is about to be married. Their boyfriend, girlfriend, go to your respective weddings, meet up later.
Yeah, and it's okay. It's okay to go to a wedding by yourself. It does not hurt anyone. So that's the show. It went incredibly long, but every part was necessary. Every part was good. I mean, if I'm being honest. So let us know. Okay, so Spotify question as well as question on YouTube. Let us know your thoughts on Ari's new song. Let us know what do you think is Lil Nas X his motivation. What else did we talk about? Oh, let us know what else did we talk about? I can't remember, but I'll put it all in the show notes. Let us know. And Jamie, before we get off, can you give us your social media? Oh, and talk about your podcast real quick, because she also has a podcast, everyone.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so if you want to connect with me, my personal social is Jay in the Big Apple, because I'm from New York City. And my podcast is called Happy and Holy. So you can find us at Happy and Holy Co. on Instagram and TikTok. And we are Happy and Holy everywhere podcasts are found, Spotify, Apple Music, and we are on YouTube under Happy and Holy TV. So if you want the visuals, you can get that. We cover kind of a mix of theology and church, like church news, like things that are happening within the church Christian like pop culture realm, and some world pop culture as well. And it's very much through the lens of the gospel and the finished work of Christ.
Amen.
So if you are Christian and you're watching this and you're like, I like Bible with my commentary. If you like what I did there, pulling out like 4 translations, I pull out more. I will, I'm known for having a stack of Bibles with me at all times. If you like that, and if you like getting into even like some of the Greek and Hebrew words, I do read biblical Greek. I'm working on my Hebrew, so I will get into that, and even some doctrinal stuff within the church, because the church, it grows, it changes, and sometimes we get off, and we love to talk about where the church is going right, where the church is going wrong. So I do that with my friend Wenny. She's my co-host, and so you can find us at Happy and Holy Co. On social media, and Happy and Holy wherever podcasts are found. Happy and Holy TV on YouTube.
Yay! So you guys definitely follow Jay. She posts really cool and aesthetic pictures. That's another thing too about her. And the podcast is really good. I'm trying to think of anything else. Make sure that you follow and subscribe for her, but also follow, like, subscribe to this podcast. Every so often I look at our followers, especially on YouTube, and I think it was today, I think it was at like 90% people who watch are not subscribed. That's way too much. So if you're watching, you're like, okay, these girls were great. Like, this is such a good podcast. Go ahead and subscribe. Like, go ahead and do that. Also, leave a like, leave a comment. Let us know. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please leave us a comment. Just honestly, just say you enjoyed it. Just, oh, I love these girls. Like, this was so great. You guys have such good insight. Go ahead and do that. I can give you a template if you want as well. No, I'm just joking. I want you to give your honest opinion, especially if it was 5 stars. And same, please rate on Spotify too. You can rate now on Spotify. I think that's it. So everyone, thanks so much for listening. I hope you have a good day, night, evening, however, wherever you're listening. Bye.
Bye.